Your Humanities Half Hour is brought to you by the Northern Marianas Humanities Council.
Hafidei Zantiro, welcome to your Humanities Half Hour. I'm Catherine Perry Harris, and my guest today is none other than the CNMI Teacher of the Year, Gerard Van Gils, also known to his teacher as Mr. G or G. G, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
So excited to have you here. Tell us, how did you feel when you realized you were named CNMI Teacher of the Year?
Well, it was a little bit intimidating. To give you some background on the Teacher of the Year program, it's a national program, and each state selects a Teacher of the Year. So there are 55 state Teachers of the Year, and we have an impossible task. We are supposed
being the best.
Well, it's really about representing all of the wonderful educators that there are in the public school systems around the country. If you think of it, there are more than 3 million public school teachers in this country. 90% of the students that go to school in this country go to public schools. So we teachers represent and we teach almost all of society. And there are many, many brilliant and wonderful altruistic teachers, and there are 55 of us who are chosen to represent the others and to bring awareness to this wonderful profession. So it's humbling out of 3 million teachers to be among the 55 that get to advocate for this wonderful profession that I love. And there are wonderful, wonderful teachers here in the CNMI, and they have been working for years and decades, and sometimes their only form of payment is a meager paycheck and a hug at the end of the day. So I'm here to advocate and represent them as well as I can.
Well, tell us a little bit about yourself on a personal level. You're now a teacher at Cagman High School. Where do you hail from, and how did you get here?
Sure. I started my professional career in Utah. My wife and I lived in Salt Lake City, and we'd been working to have a baby for a number of years, and it just wasn't really happening. We'd struggled with infertility, and we'd struggled with just living in the rat race, this young professional life of debt and car payments and house payments and shoveling the snow out of the driveway. And it was a kind of a good life, but I felt a little bit unfulfilled. When we had our child finally, we had a little baby, Talia, I came to an awareness that I was spending all of her awake hours in the office. And I would see her in the crib in the morning, and it would be dark, and I'd say goodbye to her silently, and I'd go to work, and then I'd come home at the end of a long day in the office, and she'd still be asleep. And I know babies sleep a lot, so it's hard to catch them awake, but I felt like after all of this effort to make a baby, I was missing the good parts of my life, and all I was getting was this, paycheck. And then the paycheck was going to house payments and car payments. So I wanted to get out of the rat race. I wanted to spend time with my family. And when I was 31 years old, about 5 years ago, I just kind of decided that enough was enough, and that we were going to live our lives differently. And luckily, I've got a great wife who's a good sport. And I said, hey, I want to quit everything and move away. And she said, well, where are we going? And so quite by accident, we ended up in Saipan. We set forth some criteria for what we wanted our life to look like. If we were building it from scratch, what would our life look like? And we decided that there would be lots of family time, that we would both do meaningful work that we were really passionate about, that we would have a relaxed life, and we really wanted to live near a beach. So we put together all of these characteristics, and we decided we were going to move to Puerto Rico. And not where the Shell station is, but Puerto Rico, the island, the U.S. Commonwealth in the Caribbean. And we found jobs in Puerto Rico. We found a place to live. We had packed all of our stuff, and we went down there, and we were, finalizing jobs, and every single thing fell apart. It was just every single thing that we had set up came unraveled. And then we came home, and we were sad, and we thought, well, I guess we're just supposed to be in Utah. And then ultimately, we heard about Saipan, and every single thing worked out. Job for my wife came through, housing came through. We packed up and we moved to this island that we'd never visited, never even heard of. And I had no intentions of being a teacher at that time. I just was going to stay home and be with my baby. And after a little while, I fell into teaching. And now my wife and I both do work that we find meaningful. She's a physician assistant, and I'm a teacher.
So what made you decide to become a teacher?
Well, I was kind of bored at first, so I started coaching soccer at Marianas High School. And so it was fun to go and hang out with the high school kids. And it was also great when I saw island teenagers. They're very different from, the teenagers in the continental U.S. They're so respectful. They were obedient. They would never let me carry my own things, like the bag of soccer balls. They would rush right over and carry things. They were so polite and earnest. They responded so well to compliments and praise. And they just seemed to really need, adult friends and role models. And so I decided I would volunteer and volunteer, substitute teach or whatever at the high school. But as I started to fill out the volunteer packet, I realized that the packet to become a full teacher wasn't that much harder. I just had to take a few tests, get my college transcripts, and so I applied to be a teacher. And then I met my wonderful principal, Layla Staffler at Cagman High. And I saw instantly that Cagman High School had the potential, under her great leadership, to be, a top school in the region. And over these last 4 school years that I've taught at Cagman High, it really has come so far under Principal Staffler's leadership. And I'm so proud of what our students are accomplishing, and I just love being a teacher. It's a career that has become a passion. I stumbled into it accidentally, but now I wonder why it took me so long to become a teacher. And I just know that this will be something I do forever.
It just goes to show what are the wonderful things that can happen when you follow your dream. You had a dream for a certain lifestyle, you followed it with your family, and now you're CNMI Teacher of the Year because you followed your passions. That's wonderful.
Thank you. It wasn't without fear. It's hard to lose everything familiar and walk away, and it's hard to try something new, and I was genuinely bad at it. I was not a good teacher when I began, and still I struggle. But the wonderful thing about being a teacher is that there's constantly an opportunity to improve, and we don't measure our successes and our failures by products that we produce or units that we sell. We measure our success in relationships that we have with students, in inspiration that we're able to give them. Yeah. When a kid reads a sentence smoothly, that's how I succeed. When a student feels empowered to pursue their dreams, that's how I succeed. And that's why educators are different from other professionals. We're not simply trying to just sell, make money, make a product. We're trying to build humanity, and it is the most important job in the world as far as I'm concerned. And I'm so happy to be a teacher.
Well, you've got a great shirt on today. I don't know if you wore that shirt for our interview, but it says $1 Million Scholars Tribe, obviously designed by Tribe Marianas. And a lot of people probably know you from hearing about this in the media. Tell us how this club came about and what it is all about.
Yeah, so I'll tell you a little bit of the background, and then I'll tell you a little bit about the club, if that's okay.
Sure.
So I guess it was my second year teaching, I had a teacher aide for my class, and this teacher aide was a top 10 student. She was really bright, really talented, but we were at the end of her senior year. And I asked her what she was planning to do after high school, and she didn't really have an answer. I asked her if she planned to go to college, and she said yes, but she hadn't taken the college entrance exams. Now, where I'm from, when I went to high school, all of the seniors took the college entrance exams. There's 2 main ones, the SAT and the ACT. And it was just this normal thing that all of the juniors and seniors did as we prepared for college and we went off to college, and it felt very normal. And I was surprised that here we had a top student who hadn't taken the entrance exams and wasn't prepared for college, and I felt like we should do better. The next year, I tried a little harder to help some more, and we were successful in sending a few kids off island on scholarships to college, but in that year I gained an appreciation for how difficult it is. Any parents out there who have tried to send a kid to college understand it's expensive, it's confusing, there are thousands of colleges to choose from, there's financial aid paperwork, and so I kind of felt that we needed a dedicated person at Cagman High School who was going to help people through this college application and scholarship application process.
That's a great idea.
So I took the idea to my principal and to our counselors, and everybody got on board. We called our club the $1 Million Scholars, and we called ourselves this because we had two goals. First was we wanted to raise an awareness that for students who might drop out of high school, comparing those kids to students who graduate from college, the lifetime earnings difference for those students in those two different demographics is over $1 million. So really, education does pay, especially beyond high school. But even the difference between getting a high school diploma and dropping out can be measured in dollars. Getting an associate's degree or a certificate leads to higher incomes. Going to trade schools leads to higher incomes. It leads to better jobs, higher life satisfaction. But there's a significant difference at a bachelor's degree. And the highest income increase and the greatest decrease in unemployment comes at a bachelor's degree. And so I wanted my students to understand if they would finish their 4-year college degree, they would earn over $1 million more than their peers who dropped out of high school. And the second reason we call ourselves the $1 Million Scholars is because we set a loose goal to obtain $1 million in scholarships in our first year as a club.
And that I felt was very aggressive when I first read about it. Did you achieve it?
We killed it.
Awesome.
Our first year as a club, we had over $2.5 million in scholarship offers spread amongst the 23 students who joined our first club. We call them our founders, our $1 Million Scholar Club founders. And among our awards for that first year, we had 6 students receive the Gates Millennium Scholarship. This is the most highly competitive scholarship in the country. That year we had 11 kids from the CNMI win it, and it was the last year that the Gates Millennium Scholarship was offered. And so there is likely not another high school in America that had 6 Gates Millennium winners, but Caegmon High School did. And that is a 10-year scholarship for those 6 students, where they can study anything they want all the way up through their doctorate degrees.
It's excellent.
Yeah, so it's a great scholarship. We saw massive success among the Caegmon High School $1 Million Scholars, and the success of my students led to me being our school teacher of the year and then eventually becoming the CNMI State Teacher of the Year.
You have another great program that isn't as well known, but it still seems to be very effective, Mentor for a Meal.
Yeah, so Mentor for a Meal was this passion project that I started with my friend Jay Sanchez at Caegmon High School. And what I realized was that there's a lot of students at Caegmon High, and we gave them this career test. It's like to help them select a career or a field of study based on their interests. And as we gave this test to our high school students, overwhelmingly they came back and said they wanted to become teachers. And that was great. I thought, that's fantastic. We need teachers. There's a national teacher shortage. We're going to make teachers right here at home. Well, then I was talking to my colleagues, and they said, well, yeah, the students want to become teachers because we're the only professionals they know. And I started to ask around. I asked my students, how many of you guys know an architect? How many of you guys know an engineer? How many of you guys know a biologist? How many of you guys know a physician? How many of you know an attorney? How many of you guys know an entrepreneur, somebody who owns their own business? And the students kept coming back with these blank faces. And it occurred to me that there might be something here. They want to become teachers because they might not have the same exposure to professionals that we'd like them to have. So we started Mentor for a Meal, and what I did is I invited about 30 professionals from around the island to buy a kid from Caegmon High School dinner at the Hyatt. And the Hyatt was a great partner for us. They gave us a very reasonable price on our meal, and then the mentor buys the mentee dinner. They sit down and they have a conversation for an hour and a half. The kids ask their mentors, why did you choose this field? What do you like about your career? What mistakes have you made? And the mentors ask the mentees, tell me about your life. What are your hopes and dreams? What do you think will be your next step in accomplishing your goals? And these dinners, we thought it would be a one-time event, but we had to do it again because the mentors demanded it. The mentors loved meeting our brilliant students from Caegmon High School. And so this program has repeated and repeated. It's spread to where we've had hundreds of hours of one-on-one mentorship. And, the importance of one-on-one mentorship cannot be overstated. When it comes to studies that that talk about exiting students from poverty, or helping kids out of trauma, or helping students out of social difficulties. One of the main things is mentorship. Students, young people need an adult to talk to and get good advice from. And with zero cost, no grants, no, public school system funding or government expense, these mentors dug into their own pockets and bought these kids dinner and gave them life advice. And it was wonderful. And now we've done this event 9 times. We've had it at a few different restaurants. We've had it with hundreds of different mentors and hundreds of different students, and I just love this program. And we've even extended it now that so far we've been able to include Marianas High School and Saipan Southern High School, and we have plans to include Rhoda and Tinian in our future Mentor for a Meal events.
Wow. Great. Well, we're speaking today with CNMI Teacher of the Year, Gerard Van Gils. We'll be back after this break.
This September, the Northern Marianas Humanities Council, Northern Marianas College, University of Guam, and Guampedia will host the 3rd Marianas History Conference in Saipan. The conference theme, One Archipelago, Many Stories, Milestones in Marianas History, highlights the deep and rich history of the Mariana Islands. It also bridges the political division of the archipelago, which dates to the late 19th century. The conference steering committee is now accepting abstracts under the following general categories: ancient history, including the results of archaeological research; early colonial history in the 17th and 18th centuries; colonial history in the 19th and early 20th centuries; World War II; recent post-war; and oral history and genealogical research. For more information, visit the Northern Marianas Humanities Council website at northernmarianashumanities.org. That's northernmarianashumanities.org.
Welcome back to your Humanities Half Hour. We're speaking today with CNMI Teacher of the Year, Gerard Van Gils. G, in your opinion, what makes an effective teacher?
Well, that would be a lovely question to have a nice and clean answer for. I wish there was a bullet point, a bullet list that I could just say, this is what makes an effective teacher. The thing about teaching is that we do not have a uniform, outcome that we're looking for. We're not trying to make every single kid the same. And because of that, because we're not trying to make every kid the same, we're not going to approach every single kid the same. We're not going to give them the same grades, the same assignments. We're not going to hold them to the same standards. There has to be flexibility in teachers. We have to have different approaches. We have to have different passions. Some kids come to my classroom and I feel like I'm just on my A game. I'm just doing my very best teacher voice and everything, and I'm trying to inspire them, and they're getting nothing. Mm-hmm. And they will go next door to another teacher who will have a totally different approach, and they will reach that student. And other teachers, they might have difficult situations, and I'm able to reach that kid. And so, what makes an effective teacher is a willingness of that teacher to meet the student wherever they are and take them to wherever that next step is. It's not about getting every kid to have the same outcomes at the end of 12th grade. It's about loving our students, encouraging them to pursue their passion, and it's about giving them the confidence to try something new, fail, try again, and all along the way, the teachers have to be the partners with the students, and the parents have to be partners with the teachers, and together we have this village mindset of how we improve our community. But teachers are a big part of that. So there's lots of things that make effective teachers. And I'm so happy that there are many, many wonderful teachers in the CNMI, even in my school, that are nothing like me. And a lot of those teachers, they would be very quick to say that I'm no example of what great teaching should be. It's just that I've tried something new and I've reached some kids, and other teachers are doing wonderful work and they're reaching different kids. And sometimes they get noticed for it and sometimes they don't. But the work continues. The public school system of the CNMI is wonderful. We have wonderful educators, and I believe we have the best students in the world.
You've mentioned that one of the things that is on your heart is young men in our schools. What is the status of that?
Well, if you look back to the 1960s and even into the 1970s, you would find that the majority of college graduates were male. About 60% of college graduates were male. Now that's switched. 60% of college graduates are now female. Some colleges report that they are getting 8 qualified female applicants for every, 10, total applicants. So like 8 girls to 2 boys. Girls represent 70% of the valedictorians that are graduating from high schools in the United States. And these type of statistics hold true. If you go to graduation ceremonies like I do, you'll see that the majority of the top 10s are female.
Why is that?
Well, that's a really big question. And the answer is I don't know. There's cultural reasons why girls will, seek education excellence, and boys might be encouraged to seek excellence in other areas, like sports or, work or so forth. And those are fine things as well. We have this interesting little shift where girls are now excelling in education. They're excelling beyond boys. My boss is a girl. Her boss is a girl. Our commissioner of education, we have a chairwoman of the board of education. So my whole power structure is female. But around the country and around the world, that is not the case. Men still control the majority of the chief executive positions. Men hold a strong majority of elected positions in the country and in the CNMI. And men hold the majority of board positions in the United States and in the CNMI. So what we have is we have girls who are now excelling in high school. They are graduating 6 college graduates for every 4 male college graduates. That women are excelling in education, but men maintain, control of private business and government. And what I hope to see is young men reach the level of excellence that our young women are reaching in education. And I hope to see our women gain the same level of excellence that our men have achieved in business and government and boards of directors and so forth. I at least hope that women will feel free to run for office, run and demand promotions and raises. And I hope that the world that I'm raising my 2 young daughters into is a world that is friendly for women professionals, women of all levels. At the same time, we cannot simply assume that if our boys underperform in education, that everything's just going to be fine. We need our boys to strive for excellence. We need to meet them where they are, and we need to encourage them to do better. We do have wonderful, wonderful young men, and they are scholars, and they are excelling. We just need to make sure that our boys are as appreciated in the classroom as our girls, that our boys feel as confident as our girls. And we need to make sure that our boys know that being smart is manly. Getting a good education is masculine. It's not, like getting the wrong answer getting the wrong answer isn't somehow a shame. It's just a progress. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay to try and fail. It's okay to struggle. But at the end, our boys need to keep working, just as our girls are, so that they can learn their lessons and get their grades and move on to their hopes and dreams.
I want to ask you this question. It's a little bit challenging, but I feel you're up to it.
Bring it.
One of the major crises in our community here in the Marianas right now is drugs. What role do you feel teachers play in helping combat this, or could play?
Well, we have a lot of problems in the CNMI, but I like our problems compared to the problems that the rest of the world faces. I chose to live here because I love this place. I didn't know that I'd love it, but I accidentally fell in love with these islands. And we do have challenges, but every place has challenges. And I'll take our challenges over anybody else's. These islands are wonderful, and we are making strong, strong progress. And I'm happy to be part of that progress. We will defeat the problems of drugs as a community. I was recently in the United States, and I was driving around talking at colleges, speaking at different events, and billboards were up just talking about the opioid epidemic in the United States. Communities are coming together, and they are talking about how they are going to fight the heroin, the prescription medications. We don't have any of those kinds of problems, or a very, very small degree of those types of problems here. But of course, we have other drug problems here. And those drug problems come from outside to our islands. So the solution is, to reverse that. The solution comes from within our islands, and we push back. We must create communities that are resistant to drugs. We do this by, well, I think that the key is starting with our young people. I think education is the key to combating not only drugs, but it is the key to combating every societal problem. If you look at, our death rates are coming not from drugs. They're coming from obesity. Our death rates come from our sedentary lifestyles. And I'm not just talking about the CNMI. I'm talking about the whole country. You can fight obesity by fighting poverty. You can fight drug addiction by fighting poverty. You can fight the dilapidation of our infrastructure, the failures of our society's segments, by fighting poverty. Poverty is the key element that joins all of our society's problems. And the number one cure for poverty is education. So as we can help our students graduate from high school, they will be less likely to be sucked into a poverty cycle. If we can help our students get into trade schools, community colleges, universities, they will be exiting the poverty cycle. And people who are exited from poverty are far less likely to be involved in drugs, crime, obesity, disease. I mean, it's really crazy. The correlation between poverty and all of these problems is impossible to avoid. And the number one cure for poverty is education. So if we want to fight meth, let's pick up books. Let's read to our children. Let's ask them about their homework. Let's encourage them to go to college. Let's encourage them to go to trade schools. Let's encourage them to be productive members of society. The idea that we're going to say don't do drugs and yet not substitute those activities with anything positive, it's a losing equation. So we have to fill them so full of hopes and dreams and desires. We have to give them so much optimism for their future that students will not look at drugs because they just won't have the time to waste on it. They're going places. They're doing things. Now, I will say that my students, many of them are impacted by drugs, by deaths in their families, by crime. My students are impacted. They are coming to our schools from places of trauma. And this is one role that teachers and counselors have, is that we have to identify our students who are suffering, and we need to be ready to help them, to give them emotional and, educational support and help. We have to sometimes meet their needs, even if those are needs that sometimes might be typically met at home. And for the parents listening, the best thing you can do for your kids
that was going to be my next question.
Compliment them.
Yeah,
Just compliment your kids. Tell your students that they are great readers. Tell your students that they're smart. Tell them that you admire them for being hardworking. If parents will acknowledge their students for doing the wonderful positive things that they're doing, then our students will feel inclined to keep doing those things. But if we simply berate and put down kids for doing things that they shouldn't do, but we don't give them any emotional support for an alternative, no changes will happen. So our parents have to be there emotionally for our students, and our teachers need to as well.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask, is how best can parents partner with the school system to get this further education for their kids? And, looking at different cultures, there are different ways within your culture to show that support and that encouragement and give those compliments. Of course, in American culture, we're very verbal, oh, you did a great job. But within your culture, what's appropriate to show your child that they're on the right track and that, you encourage them to excel. So, I got to ask, what's next on the horizon for you as Teacher of the Year?
Well, I'm just coming off of a trip to Washington, D.C., where I was able to meet with President Trump in the Oval Office.
Congratulations.
Thank you. That was great to represent our islands. I wore Carolinian Liga Tutur.
Yes.
And I wore a spondylus pin on my collar because I really wanted to symbolically carry my students into that house of power, into the Oval Office. I wanted the indigenous peoples of these islands to know that I carried them with me and that I thought of them and that I tried my best to advocate for our islands. Mm-hmm. This summer I have 3 separate conferences. They range from team building to educational policy to advocacy on behalf of the teaching profession. And then this August, I'll be back at school at Cagman High School. I have 2 more trips in the fall. So being Teacher of the Year is a lot of work. But it's given me the opportunity to advance my platform, to speak on behalf of our wonderful educators, on behalf of our scholars, and people like you who are giving me an opportunity to have a voice and share my voice with our islands and to just say what a big fan of public education I am. This is what being Teacher of the Year has given me. It's given me the chance to be a cheerleader for my profession and for my students. And I really appreciate you having me here today. And whatever comes in the future, every opportunity I have, I will advocate for our teachers. It is a noble and good profession. We should honor them and speak favorably of them and support them. And I will speak for our students because they are wonderful. They are respectful. They are kind. They are eager to learn. We have just great, great students. As far as I'm concerned, that's what the future holds for me. Advocate for my teachers and advocate for my students. That's what I'm about.
If our listeners are interested in either donating to the $1 Million Scholars Club or participating in your Mentor for a Meal program, how can they reach you?
Yeah, I'm really excited. If I can just say one thing, I advocated to our governor that we should do more to help students who would like to study off island. Our governor responded by asking for an additional scholarship to be created with the CNMI Scholarship Office that will support our scholars from around the CNMI who might like to travel off island. I very much hope that this next year, every high school in the CNMI, every public high school, will have a college preparation program. I hope that we will have $1 Million Scholar Clubs at our high schools. And I hope that our government is engaging with teachers and students in a new and profound way. But if you'd like to support the $1 Million Scholars at my school or at any school, you can shoot me an email. If you'd like to be a mentor at one of our Mentor for a Meal events this fall, we'll continue them, you can shoot me an email. My email is gerard.vangils@cnmipss.org. So it's gerard.vangils, VANGILS, @cnmipss.org. Or, of course, you can come check me at Cagman High.
Well, we've been speaking today with CNMI Teacher of the Year, Gerard Van Gils. Thank you so much for your time and for your inspiration.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
This has been your Humanities Half Hour. I'm Catherine Perry Harris.
This program was supported by a We the People grant awarded to the Northern Marianas Humanities Council from the National Endowment for the Humanities.